Welcome to Carnegie Mellon University and the second annual Empirical Educator Project Summit. We are delighted to have each and every one of you. So the first thing that I want to say to you and really to ask of you is to keep in mind and not forget that you are the main event. We're going to have a lot of great presentations. We're going to have some really satisfying conversation, and there is going to be a certain amount of spectacle to this event. But at the end of the day, every person in this room who is wearing a conference badge is an educator. And that means that when we leave this conference and go back to our day jobs, we will still have an obligation to our students. And so if we do not go home with something for our students, then whatever we have done here has been a waste of time and money. So I hope that what we can do here is going to be productive for you and for them. That is the intention. So let's talk about what we mean by an empirical educator. There are basically two parts to this. Let's talk about the educator first. In the project, we define an educator very broadly. It's basically anyone who feels a personal responsibility for empowering students to learn. So that is often someone who's working in a classroom, but it could be someone who has an administrative or supporting role on a campus. It could be a product designer. It could be really, again, anyone who is involved in supporting a student. And then there's the empirical part, which just means that you learn from your students how to help them learn better. So you try things with your students, you see what happens, and then you adjust what you do based on what happens. The way I was raised, empirical educator is really redundant. If you're not learning from your students, if you're not trying and adjusting, you can't really be an educator. You can't educate. You can lecture, you can profess, but you can't educate. So we have a very broad, inclusive definition of empirical educators, and I firmly believe that everyone in this room is an empirical educator, and I hope that you all feel that way about yourselves. Now, I have come up with 4 levels of empirical education, and given the august nature of this assemblage, I feel compelled to say, I just made this up. This is not research-backed, except in the sense that it is consciously and or unconsciously inspired by research I may have read or researchers I may have spoken to, a few of whom I'll be interviewing in just a little while. So the way I think about it, so this is just a framework for thinking about it. At the first level, intuitively empirical, that just means that as an educator, you naturally pay attention to your students and respond to them. You don't necessarily think about it, it's just what you do. This is what you would call, or I would call, a natural teacher, right? A mindfully empirical educator is someone who makes some effort to incorporate that listening function into the design of their class. So you might build some formative assessments in on a regular basis because you're thinking about how you're going to listen. I'd say at the step between level 2 and level 3 is where you start getting, where it starts getting hard to make the leap. So a metacognitively empirical educator is someone who not only listens to the students, but challenges her own assumptions about what she's hearing might mean. The framework of what students find hard and what they don't find hard. I assume that when I go into the classroom, students are going to struggle with this. They understand how to do that. I adjust within certain parameters. But well, what if I'm wrong about that? How do I check my assumptions about that? Right? And a socially empirical educator is someone who works on not only communicating what she's learning about teaching and learning, including challenging her own assumptions, but also actively learns from others. So you're contributing to the research, you're learning from the research. It might or might not be formal scholarship, but you're engaging in some sort of discourse with your colleagues. So the Empirical Educator Project is an effort to learn how we can better support people in becoming socially empirical educators. How can we build the social structures that the institutions and the culture by which we can encourage faculty to have a kind of professional identity that we're supposed to talk about these things. And this year, last year, this Empirical Educator Project Summit was really a kind of proof of concept, really the entire first year. This year, let's call it a beta test. I was persuaded, I was originally going to call it 0.2. I was persuaded to up the increment to 1.0 beta. We're thinking about this as we're calling it an EdY hackathon, where ED stands for educational design. Why have you chosen the educational design that you have? Hackathon is not a literal hackathon of software, but hackathon is a useful social convention where people get together as a group to work on a concrete goal. In our case, it will be some sort of a learning challenge to achieve a desired outcome in a time-bounded way. So I want to be clear, by the way, that thanks to a help of someone in this room, we were able to reach out to the edX folks. This was in no way intended to be a slam on edX in any way. It is intended to be a comment on the way we need to be empirical and continue to think and experiment and move forward. We had conversations with them. It was a little late to get them here for this summit, but we intend to keep talking with them and hopefully get them involved with the project. So we'll talk more tomorrow about this concept that will be sort of the framing concept for our work together this year. But I'd like you to start thinking in the background about a hackathon as a social convention, as a way of approaching group work, either intra or inter-institutional group work to solve an educational problem. So here's how we think about the agenda. Today, the talks that you'll be hearing are about understanding who's in the room and what the collaborative challenges and opportunities might be. And I want to be very clear, everybody goes to conferences understanding that the talks are really secondary to the networking. We are explicit and mindful about that. Our talks are designed to help you think about how you want to connect with the people in the room. They're not about, I mean, certainly their results and the projects that you're going to hear about are interesting in and of themselves. And there'll be things that you will learn. But the goal is that you will learn about them in a way that will make you want to approach the people afterwards and think about what you want to do next. The first half of Tuesday, we're going to take a deep dive on Carnegie Mellon's incredible contribution. You'll hear a little preview of what is in it late today, but honestly, it's such a sprawling and deep and broad contribution that it's going to take some time to go through it all, and Tuesday morning is going to be all about that. And then in this Tuesday afternoon, once we've primed the pump, we're going to spend some time. I always think it's pretty silly to invite a whole group of smart people and talk at them and never ask them what they think. So Tuesday afternoon is going to be all about getting input from you in a structured way about how we move forward for the rest of the year, how we structure our group work so that you all can get the benefit of each other's talents and resources to move your efforts forward in your respective organizations. And then there is a significant amount of white space that we've built into the schedule. You will find, those of you who were in last year's summit know from experience, that is not time off. That is definitely time on, right? That is the time when you are going to find the people that you heard speak or people that you don't know. As you look around the room, I guarantee even those of you who were here last year are seeing a lot of faces that are unfamiliar. That is by design. Your job is to meet some friends that you have not yet met, right? And find out why they are here and why you're supposed to know them. So I want to put out just two more thoughts before we get on with the show. First of all, the Empirical Educator Project is really intended to be the beginning of, maybe this is a pretentious word, but I don't have a better one, so I'm going to call it a movement. We want to include everyone. The reason we're not including everyone yet is because we don't know how to do it usefully, right? We don't know how to scale in a way that will allow everyone to participate usefully. We're trying to figure that out. And one of the ways that we're thinking about that is to make the Empirical Educator Project a bridge between and among networks. So this year, we're trying some early experiments with scaling and reaching out through your networks. I'll give you a couple of examples. We have some members of the local Pittsburgh Council of Higher Education here visiting for much of the 2 days. So that's one kind of network. We have several campuses of the University of Maryland, as well as the university-wide Kirwan Center represented here, and we hope that we'll be able to see some system-wide synergies develop there. That's another kind of network. There's a third kind of network that we're trying to reach out through that I'm going to save us a surprise for later today. We can't do all the networks out there that we'd like to yet. We're just going to pick and choose. But this is how we're going to grow. But as we grow, it's really important, I think, to all of us, to me certainly, that we think about inclusion and diversity, and I mean that in every possible way, individually and institutionally. We are not where I would like us to be on those scores yet, and the buck stops here with that. Right? I am personally responsible for who ends up in this room, so I will take responsibility for that. And I'm asking for your help as we go forward. My personal philosophy on inclusion and diversity is that you have to start at the beginning, not at the end. If you're looking at your program and trying to figure out, what can we get some more women on the program, then you've already failed. So as we reach out through those networks, let's try to reach out and make those networks as diverse as possible in the beginning. And that's something that some of you can help with as we're doing that outreach. But one thing that you all can help with is to think about making sure that everyone feels empowered to participate. And there are all kinds of structural barriers, obvious and non-obvious, to empowerment. So just have a little situational awareness and help me out with that, please. I can't express to you how amazing Carnegie Mellon has been as a partner and a host in this endeavor. Fortunately, I will not have to, because you will see it with your own eyes over the next 2 days. You really have no idea what you're in for. I also want to say a word about our sponsors and how important it is, how important they are to this project. One of the goals of the Empirical Educator Project is to create a new economy where vendors are rewarded not for their hype and for their marketing, but for their participation, their contribution, and their collaboration. We have vetted our sponsors very carefully to make sure that they understand what we're trying to accomplish, and that they've sent representatives who are capable of participating in that. Those of you who were here last year saw that. You will see that this year in the presentations. And the best thing that you can do, if that is a world that you want to live in, is give these folks a chance. Okay. We tend to eschew many of the conference formalisms that you find in other conferences, including introductions of speakers for the most part. If you want to know who's speaking, there are programs sprinkled throughout the room. You can go online to empiricaleducators.net. On the summit page, there's a program there where you also can see the Twitter hashtag that we're using for the conference. The base Twitter hashtag is EEP 2019. We are live audio streaming, so you can play along with the folks at home. Also, the best way to find out more about who's speaking is to go up to them afterwards and say, "Hi, that was really interesting talk. Who the heck are you?" Right? I happen to think that mystery is a great way to add a little spice to a relationship. But in this first case, I'm going to make an exception because this next speaker is our host. Thank you for lending us your new building, sir. We promise not to break anything. So James H. Garrett Jr. was named Provost and Chief Academic Officer of Carnegie Mellon University effective January 1st, 2019, Mazel Tov. A member of the Carnegie Mellon faculty since 1990, he became Dean of Carnegie Mellon University's College of Engineering in 2013. Immediately prior to that, he spent 6 years as head of the college's Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. Provost Garrett is Carnegie Mellon plaid through and through, having received his BS, MS, and PhD degrees in civil and environmental engineering from the institution. Among his many recognitions and awards, in 2018, Provost Garrett was awarded the title of Distinguished Member of American Society of Civil Engineers, the highest honor available to civil engineers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jim Garrett.
Thank you, Michael. It was interesting to hear you talk about, we're all empirical educators. I'm an empirical academic administrator as well. It's very important to listen to the deans, one of whom's here, and the faculty in terms of how to do my job. So that resonated with me. Thanks again, Michael. And it's great to see so many of you here in attendance today. It's my true pleasure to welcome you here to Carnegie Mellon. Another side, you may not know the provost here at CMU is in charge of the weather, so thank you very much. Yeah, wait till tomorrow. Could be snowing tomorrow, I hate to say it. It's also my pleasure to help kick off this Empirical Educator Project Summit. It's sponsored by our Simon Initiative, which you can see up here. We're proud hosts of this series of panel discussions, workshops, and demonstrations, which Michael so very capably laid out, which is really is a movement to be generating this set of learning approaches that can be taken up and really help our students, who are our most important constituency, to better learn. With numerous drivers of change that are influencing higher education and the workforce, all colleges and universities need to think about how to evolve. We certainly are thinking about that here at Carnegie Mellon, so as to ensure our students that they will be poised for academic and career success. It's going to be more and more dynamic. The future of work is very much being changed by automation and AI. We need to be helping our students to be much better prepared for their career. We've already begun here at Carnegie Mellon to rethink our curriculum, to employ creative pedagogies and technologies, some of which you'll hear about today and definitely tomorrow, and to lower the boundaries that need to be lowered in order to create new relationships. So your idea of imploring everybody to be networking is really critical, I think, for all forms of education, especially education at universities and colleges. So through the Simon Initiative and other centers and initiatives that we have here, every day we're exploring ways to leverage technology to improve learning outcomes by applying and advancing evidence, empirical evidence from the learning sciences. Our interdisciplinary approach in this area has long been a part of the university's mission. You will find folks involved in this activity from all over the university. And I'm very proud that Carnegie Mellon stands at the forefront of development of impactful and effective learning methods that can be adapted to universally improve educational outcomes for learners. And it's inspiring to see all of you here as representatives of your universities and educational technology vendors willing to consider new perspectives and the possibilities of global approaches to improving teaching and learning, the societal level. In fact, I think it's critically important for a society to be created in these areas, because if you're outside of your comfort zone and all alone, you don't have somebody else to help. I seek out the provosts. There's only one at any university, and I seek out the provosts from all over the country, because that's very important for helping to make change. So we share a mutual promise to all of our students to provide an exceptional academic environment, for they have chosen our respective universities and institutions to learn, to grow, and to gain the skills needed to succeed in all that they endeavor. So I'm looking forward to hearing about all the great new ideas and projects that you will all develop in the near term, and stemming from the presentations that are shared today and tomorrow. I'll join you again tomorrow for the official launch of the Open Simon Toolkit, which we're extremely excited to be announcing and making available. Again, welcome to Carnegie Mellon. Enjoy the summit, and thank you for your dedication to improving how educators can teach our student learners more effectively today and tomorrow. Before I close, I'd like to thank the leaders and researchers involved with the Simon Institute, in particular, Dean Richard Shyness, Dean of the Dietrich College of Humanities and Social Sciences, of course, Michael Feldstein, we have an EPP department, so I'm constantly, the EEP director, Norman Beer, our executive director, where's Norman? Back there, of the Simon Initiative, Ken Kadinger, who's a professor of human-computer interaction and psychology, of course, Marcia Lovett, Associate Vice Provost for Educational Innovation and Learning Analytics, and Director of the Eberly Center. I would be remiss if I didn't also shout out Amy Burkert, our Vice Provost for Education, who really has been supportive of educational innovation at this university. And of course, last but not least, Lauren Herkes, who's the Simon Initiative research scientist. We were actually talking about empirical evidence of social interaction of students as we were sitting there. So clearly, this is very important networking. Thank you for your steadfast commitment in these collaborative efforts and inspiring educators here at Carnegie Mellon. I thank all of you. I'll now turn the program back over to Michael, Ken, Marcia, and Lauren to lead a conversation about CMU's learning engineering and how it will enrich the next year of the Empirical Educator Project. Michael, thank you.